This is the new King Sports Network. This 2020 Sports Update brought to you by Consumer Cellular. Consumer Cellular, where you can get the best prices for as better than the other competitors. Go to www.consumercellular.com. Active Masters in Augusta, Scott Scheffler leads the pack by one stroke lead, by 7 strokes. Tiger Woods is struggling in the Open in the last round of it at Augusta. It is in fifth. The end of the NBA season has Boston leading Washington in early games, 67-51. Cleveland over Charlotte at halftime. Indiana over Atlanta. Steph Curry may not play this afternoon in the team's closing match against Utah. 2020 Sports Update. I'm Michael Lewis. 2020 Sports Update. Brought to you by Consumer Cellular.
Marcus Rogers made a contract with himself. I will never again work for another man or woman. Or Todd, especially Todd. I lay down my badge, abandon my corporate phone plan.
This is the Kings Sports Network, home of champions. Where champions reign. Kings Sports Network. You're listening and watching the Sports Zone on the King Sports Network with the sports vet, Matthew Lewis, and Courtney Mendenhall. Get in and talk now at 1 800 333 TAOK or 1415 333 TAOK. From points across the globe, here's the sports vet and Courtney. Thank you very much for joining us on Sports Zone right here on the new King Sports Network. I'm your truly the sports vet Michael Lewis. Courtney Mendenhall is joining me in just a moment. Hope you had a very interesting week. It started with the eclipse, and hopefully your team can start eclipsing out in the first week of the baseball season as well. Thank you again for joining us right here on the Rain Sports Network. Oh, on the new King Sports Network. I forgot the Rain Sports Network is no more. um, it is the end of the basketball season. We'll talk about that as well. Um, we'll talk about that as well, and also we'll talk about the passing of O.J. Simpson. Even in still a lot of effect on the athletes, the African American athletes as well, that are playing today. uh, so Let's get right to it. 1-800-337-7171, 1-1333 800 TLK, or 1-415-777 TLK. All right. You can listen to us on the show right now on KRBH 97.1 and RTV television on YouTube as well. All right. Also, watch this in replay. Rewind Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on RTV television via YouTube as well. All right. So let's go with this. And I'm actually going a little bit. Also follow us on Sports Zone 7 on X as well. All right. Zone In is brought to you by Consumer Cellular. Consumer Cellular, you can get the best. You can get the best. I mean, the best service for your dollar, and better than the other competitors. Verizon, AT&T, get that. Go to www.consumercellular.com, and if you go and mention the Sports Zone, you actually will be able to get a additional line for your home. Consumer Cellular. All right, let's go start on getting this started. As you know, back-to-back crowns for the men and the women. All right. Well, as we knew from this point on, the University of Connecticut Huskies men's basketball team and Dan Hurley won their second national championship after winning it the year before, defeating Zach Edey and Purdue by a score of 65-50. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, the South Carolina Gamecocks had a a favorite-filled victory, defeating Caitlin Clark in Iowa, and getting back for the revenge of losing to them in the Final Four last year before they played lost before Iowa lost to LSU in a championship game also as well. Both of these two teams have dynasties, we think. Both of their for UConn, uh, uh, they'll lose clinging to the NBA draft, and for Don Staley's, uh, legacy of a ball club with South Carolina, she is going to only lose Camila Cardozo. So I would think this is probably good for the for the game of basketball. As you probably know, a lot of players after losing to these two teams, a lot of players started running into the transfer portal. We'll talk about that as we go into the rest of the show. But I think that UConn is most likely going to be heralded as a number one AP poll, or either it's going to be either them or Houston next year. But I think them being the back-to-back champions, I would not see them no less than one next year. But Houston, as you know, everybody thought it would be Houston and Connecticut in the men's side, but you never know. I would say that Houston could possibly crack the number one spot, but Connecticut, as we say, there is a possibility that Connecticut may end up actually winning the tournament. And this will be the first time that you would have seen a UConn team go three and uh, three-time champion since I think it was 2014 or 15, 16. But I have to go back and do a check on that. As far as the women of South Carolina, they would be, if they were to win it next year, and they're most likely to be the odds-on favorite. They're going to be having all their players back, including Hollywood Raven Johnson, who actually put a number on Caitlin Clark in the in the women's championship title game. Clark was just unstoppable in the first quarter, scoring 18 points. And when Johnson came up on her and went on a match, uh, that was it. Dawn Staley was just unbelievable. Um, let's talk about Dawn Staley. As you probably know, the Dawn legacy, and here's the thing with the Dawn legacy. I'm gonna be upfront and honest with you. I've always loved Dawn Staley when she was a player. And when she played in the WNBA with Charlotte, she finished her career here in Houston, matter of fact, with the Comets. But Dawn Staley, when I knew she would become a coach, and she started off being a coach, and I can only say this much here is that Dawn Staley was going to rebuild the South Carolina program because the Lady Gamecocks were just not really an efficient ball club. You know, the recruitment, everything went to Tennessee, and you'll get the Andrea Carters going there, you'll get other players going there, and but Don Staley just seemed like she just got to pick a litter. But for some reason or another, the Asia Wilson started coming there, the Leah Boston started coming there, the Chelsea Grace, the played at Duke. They were already there with with their talented players, but the people that started thinking about Duke started leaving the other parts of the SEC and the Tennessees and the LSU's. They make the transfer portals down to Columbia. And what happened? This was unbelievable. 3 championships for Don Staley. And now 109 victories and only 3 losses for Dawn Staley in this part of her legacy. And the thing is that Hall of Fame is going to probably call her within the next 2 years. The next 2 years, maybe next year. But you look at it from a standpoint, having these players come back that are underclassmen, and Cardozo's the only one that you're losing. You have to deal with Watkins and Johnson and the rest of the underclassmen and the other freshman Johnson for another year. It's gonna be very unbelievably hard to beat the South Carolina Gamecocks. Unbelievable. You're watching and listening to the Sports Zone on the new King Sports Network. And I'm your truly sports red Michael Lewis with you. I just got word that Courtney Mendenhall will be back with us next week. Um, she's on an assignment, and she'll be back with us next week. Um, let's go to the next one. You probably understood that the women's madness, their the title game between South Carolina and Iowa, garnered more than 18 million viewers. The men's only had 9 million. Why is that? Well, let's just go with the one reason. We're going to lead into this in our next segment. But players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Camila Cardozo, more so Clark, brought the actual women's game back to another level or raise it to another level. You probably saw a lot of greatness within these. You saw a lot of greatness within the women's game this year. Caitlin Clark breaking records. Dawn Staley's team winning by close to 70 some odd points. Camilo Cardozo becoming one of the most prolific centers in the league. Um, you had a lot of great stories in women's basketball this year. As for the men, you really didn't have that panache or anything like the women. You didn't really have that those players that played and okay, you got this player and this player um, and this player and this player. Uh, it didn't feel correct, or it didn't feel right for some reason when you had LSU versus Iowa. That felt like a championship game. You had almost 15 million people watch that game. Then LSU played South Carolina. You had 18 million people watching that game. But what about the final game for Alabama and UConn? Barely. 5.5 million people watched that game. The other one, Zach Edey and Purdue winning their game. 3 million people watched the game. Even in lieu of South Carolina blowing out NC State, 11 million people watched that game. So what we're saying is the fact is women's basketball is actually taking another level. And this is just seeding into where the WNBA was when it first started in 97. Stars are beginning to shine on the women's side. On the men's side, draft picks have not been really the cat's meow. Unbelievable. As you probably know, speaking of, the WNBA draft could be the highest watched tomorrow at Secaucus, New York, New Jersey. And I'm going to be honest with you, it could be the highest watch tomorrow because, as we know, as of this hour, sometime to sometime tomorrow in the afternoon, Caitlin Clark will most likely will agree to sign to an agree or not sign, but will agree to a contract with the Indiana Fever and will become the number one pick in the draft. Now, number two roughly could either be Cameron Brink of Stanford or it could be this lady. The possibility may loom that Camila Cardozo could go second, but I'm thinking she may end up playing with this young lady in Chicago, Angel Reese. The two rookies could end up landing at the same spot in the same place. Now, Rakia Jackson could go second, and then Jackson could fly down to three and be where, because the Sparks could take either Brink or they could take Jackson. I think the smart move would be more so taking. I would say take Jackson. Take Richie Jackson if you're Chicago, because you still have Cardozo, you still have Jackson, and you have Dina Evans. Now, as you probably know, Chicago has got the Sky have gone through a rebuilding period because they lost Stephanie Dolson and they just recently lost Kalia Copper, so they lost scoring. So now they're going to have to figure out how they're going to, and they lost Smith also this year. So they're going to have to figure out how they're going to do their draft, how they're going to do it. And I think with Cardozo and Rakia Jackson, I think that will be great. But the draft could be the highest watch because it's once in the evening, and then the women basketball enthusiasts want to see how Caitlin Clark will do with Aaliyah Boston, with Lisa Smith. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Indiana's gonna be a very interesting ball club to watch. And but still, it's gonna have to be how the other teams draft and what pieces are going to be put in place, especially for the three-time champion Las Vegas Aces, who don't lose pieces because all of them, from the murderers all have row of Wilson, Gray, uh, Plum, and Young all come back, and then the energy woman Alicia Clark all come back with Becky Hammond. So if they win 3 titles, you never know. You're watching, listen to the Sports Zone right here on the Rain on the King Sports Network. Excuse me, the new King Sports Network. Got to get the old Sports Network out of my mind. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the transfer portal and how the transfer portal has come. Hmm, we'll talk about that. The transfer portal and much, much more. You can stay. The zone is anyway. You're watching listening to the Sports Show on the King Sports Network. This is the Kings. The best way to see it. This is the King Sports Network. This is the King Sports Network. You're back to the Sports Show on the King Sports Network. 1-800-337-7171, 777 TLK. It is the Sports Zone on the King Sports Network. I'm yours truly, the sports vet Michael Lewis. I got word that Courtney Mendenhall is under the weather, but hope she feels better, and we will hopefully have her to join us next week as well on the King Sports Network. Don't forget, you can always listen and watch and listen to the show replay tomorrow. Always on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on RTV television via YouTube as well. Don't forget to follow us on Sports Zone 7 on X as well. All right. Look, we've been talking about this after the championships and if your team lost and blah, blah, blah. We have been talking so heavily and seeing so heavily the transfer portal. And there are schools that are leading in the transfer portal. We understand that, young people, they lose a ball game or they lose in a championship, in a tournament. And we understand that. But the transfer portal for me tells me that either the coach or somebody didn't get along with somebody, or they just want to move on to a better program athletically. Or maybe they have a major that for some reason or other wasn't available at the school that they were, and so now they want to move on. Either way, anywho, LSU tops the transfer portal for women, including Haley Van Lith, and 4 of her LSU women's basketball teammates have left the school and have moved on, or leaving the school and moved on. Sources are saying that lift most likely will go to Mississippi State, and 3 other key players could be going other places. Wonder what's about the Kim Mulkey situation. Film at 11. For men, there was a high increase in transfer portals for the football program and for the basketball program. Now, the women did not have a big transfer portal. Their basketball or volleyball programs did not. But you can also see, for instance, other schools, especially out west, where there won't be any Pac 12, they started transferring when going into the transfer portal as soon as the Pac 12 announced they won't be going into, they'll be disbanding after the season. So, what does this transfer portal mean? Two things. It means for some reason or another that these young people are now transferring, and if they have NIL money, it's not going to follow them. They're going to have to redo the NIL money somewhere else. Because if they got the NIL money in that school where they're transferring from, that's going to hurt them more than it will help them. My best bet, my best advice for any player, even if they're on a COVID or grad student and COVID combo that keeps them there until they're probably 28, I would say stay at that school. You never know. Seasons might change. It might be your time. That's all I have to say on it. Our next topic. Let's go to this. As you probably know, the UFL and NFL, XFL, UFL and the XFL have merged. Well, it was like the UFL and the XFL teams both merged from USFL and the XFL all merged. They've been playing since March, 3 weeks ago. They've had games on ABC. They've had games on ESPN as well, 1 and 2. Now, the UFL is drawing NFL interest because the NFL would like to expand and they want to talk to 2 cities that are in the UFL, I say bracket, but they want to talk to 1 or 2 cities in that UFL league, I guess you want to call it. 1 is San Antonio, the Brahmas, where they play. 2 is the Stallions, Birmingham, where they play. The possibility may loom that the NFL looks to expand to possibly 34 teams. This is going to take the league a little bit longer to do the draft? Why is it already that the NFL is taking some rules from the UFL or the USFL or the XFL? They took some of their rules and now implementing them into this season coming forward. I'm beginning not to understand this. Trying not to. But either way, the UFL is drawing the NFL interest for some reason or another. I'm trying to figure this out. Well, in any event, Birmingham and San Antonio are on the NFL radar, and they would like to have those 2 cities as expansion franchises, possibly in 2026 and 7. San Antonio has the facility for it, the Alamo Dome. And Birmingham kind of sort of has that facility. But this is where the University of Alabama Birmingham plays. It's more of a college field, but it can hold an NFL type of field. Birmingham City Council, they're thinking about possibly doming the stadium and making it look NFL ready. Film at 11 on this one. I don't know if the NFL and USF, if the NFL can draw any more attention from the new UFL. I know they've taken a few of their rules, but taking San Antonio possibly could be a possibility because then you'd have a three-way freeway type of rivalry between the Texans, Cowboys, and whatever the San Antonio team would be named. But what is around Birmingham? Uh, Saints, Titans, Falcons, but in the distance though, not really close together. We don't want 11 on this one. You listen to the Sports Zone right here on the King Sports Network, and I'm yours truly, the sports vet Michael Lewis. Courtney Mendenhall, I hope she's getting better. She's not feeling well today, and hopefully she'll be back with us next week. Well wishes to Courtney on her getting well and uh, coming back to the show next week. Hope she feels better. My zone take. You know, the main thing about the zone take is this, and Courtney would have been on this with me as well. We visited the fact is that as you probably know, America's most hated villain, who everybody says got away with murder, O.J. Simpson, Orenthal James Simpson, passed away this past week, last week, from complications from a battle with prostate cancer. He passed away at his home from the disease in front of his daughter and son, who he had been estranged from, and uh, and his grandchildren as well. Um, Simpson was 76. As you probably know, sports fans will know, he played 11 glorious seasons. He played with the Buffalo Bills coming out of USC after he won the Heisman Trophy, and was first ever African American to break Jim Brown's record of 2,000 yards in one season. I believe it was 1973. He ended his career, as you know, he's from the San Francisco area with the 49ers back in 1978 and 9. He played before Joe Montana arrived there and played when Steve DeFerg was the quarterback there with the 49ers. Um, but what we do know, and the rest of America knows, is going to be 30 years to the day this coming June. And as you probably know, O.J. Simpson was well known for the for the murder of his ex-wife ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman at their home in Brentwood. He was known for this. You probably know there will be a 30-30, probably a 30-30 documentary on the 30th anniversary of the O.J. Simpson chase that made the world stop. This was the only chase that made the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks NBA Finals championship game series look small on a Friday night. On that warm night in Los Angeles, after a arrest warrant was put out for Simpson, after he had not come home, had not been at his home in Brentwood, Al Collins, who played with Simpson in Buffalo and is a Los Angeles native, actually had picked up Simpson from which would have been the LA airport, and took OJ back home. And OJ had picked up a gun and went back with Collins after finding out that he was being sought after by the Los Angeles Police Department, and decided that he couldn't take it anymore, the pressure and everything. And he started riding along the freeway as the Golden State Freeway 5 in Los Angeles to the 405, and captivated a nation. until that evening at 8:05 p.m. Pacific time, 11 p.m. 05 p.m. Eastern, 10:05 Central. Orenthal James Simpson was arrested by the Los Angeles police and was booked into the Los Angeles jail, only to find out that O.J. Simpson would be acquitted. But not acquitted, though, because his problems would go even further than that. Simpson would spend time after going back and supposedly getting stuff that was his from a Las Vegas, I guess it was more like a trade show, sports trade show. And he was trying to get all of his belongings, stuff that belonged to him, back to take back home with him in his Las Vegas home. He was arrested and had to serve time. Not only that, he had to serve time for the civil matter with the Goldmans, which they will receive $146 million. What is it with, and with Simpson's passing, there were people that wanted to say, we were glad he's gone, let him burn, or pass bad judgment on this man that for some reason or other captivated everyone with his Hertz commercials, with Arnold Palmer, uh, him being a actor on the Leslie Nielsen series, The Naked Gun, and also in a disaster movie. He was even on different other shows as well. But we will know O.J. Simpson as well for this scene, or for this scene, or for this scene. We won't know O.J. Simpson for this scene, or this scene. We're even going to the Hall of Fame. Now, fast forward circa to the 21st century and to 2024. There had been so many fallen African American athletes in the last 10 years to commit heinous crimes. Henry Ruggs formerly of the Raiders, who's serving time, and Ray Rice and Richard Sherman and others that had crimes of violent nature that may have costed their will. Even it goes back to the 90s, of a situation with Nate Newton or the Cowboys, and the Cowboys, and after they won the third Super Bowl, and having young teenage women, underage women at a home, one of the players' homes outside of Dallas. But all these athletes are African American. We understand that there's money that comes about, but you win the Super Bowl. But just recently, Rashee Rice, a native of Dallas and out of SMU, who played at SMU, and one of the contributing members of the Kansas City Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl over the San Francisco 49ers, was arrested outside of Dallas in a town called Enos after admitting and showing remorse for the part of injuring 6 people in a major accident along the Dallas Expressway. This just happened about 2 weeks ago. Rice had 2 leased cars. Well, one was a driver, and we found out through everything that Rice was one of the drivers after Dallas police did the investigation. I can only say this much of this stigma. As a former athlete myself, never got into trouble or anything. Even a former coach myself, never got into trouble or anything. But there is stigma of race war within the sports world. We know that African American men and women are the lowest paid if they go to a small or mid range or an HBCU, or they go to a a smaller D3 school, a D2 school, a D1 school, and do so well down there. Get to a they get it's harder for them to get to a D1 school that can pay them the 1 to 2 to 5 mils a year. But we are being normalized for being the villains, which is pretty much what was talked about with Angel Reese or Flysy Johnson and the LSU Lady Tigers, or what is talked about with the the on court or off field antics of Georgia players when they go drinking, or the off the field antics of the on court antics of Angel Reese. Um, Trash talking is pretty much what they do. But these young people have to have some guidance when they get off the court. Never expose your personal life in social media, or never trust the wrong people with your NIL dealings. You have to really kind of look at it from everything from face value. This is when you get ready to get into the professional ranks, you're going to be known for who you are by your character, by your professionalism, and being hardworking and humble. I couldn't say this much here for everybody, but there should be more Harry Williamses. And that guy was the sports psychologist for the San Francisco 49ers. Even more Rihanna Henderson's, a talented young woman that I used to work with. I would hopefully work with again sometime, someday, podcasting wise. Even have as a guest. She's probably one of the best African American female sports performance, mental performance specialist I've ever met. I think the really big thing is that there has to be more there has to be more resources for these athletes who are young, and even pro athletes who are not so young, veteran athletes who are African American. Because of the fact is we are targeted to do wrong. We're not targeted to do right. There are a few of us that will do right. We are targeted to do wrong. The list goes on and on with this, from this with Rice and Ray Rice and Deshaun Watson and Richard Sherman's brash at his wife's home, a family home. We are being targeted and being victimized by it. More so African American male athletes who are professional and collegiate. My final take on this program and what we got next for next week when we come back on the zone. Stay close. You are listening to the Sports Zone on the Kings.
Contract with himself. I will never again work for another man or woman. I,
This is the Ray. This is the King Sports Network. We talking about cash back. We talking about cash back. We not talking about the game. Cash back like a price for Chase Freedom Unlimited. This is the King Sports Network. You're back in the zone on the Sports Zone on the King Sports Network. 1-800-337-7171-145-777-2OK. Thank you very much for joining us on the King Sports Network. King Sports Zone. I'm the studio sports Lewis with you. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Courtney Mendenhall, hopefully she is going to be back with us next week. She is a little bit under the weather, so Courtney, we wish you wellness and getting back here with us, getting back here on the show with us next week as well. All right, as you probably know, the best of the street mental with the beautiful Rihanna Henderson is up next. Most likely will be at 3:05 Eastern, 2:05 Central as well. And Zone Takes, usually Courtney's with me on this. Zone Takes is brought to you by Evermore Water. Evermore Water, more better water. www.evermore.com. Pure artesian water, naturally made. My zone take for this day, since there is no Courtney, and she probably would agree with me on this, is the racism that is pending its ugly head upon the sporting world. Orenthal James Simpson was just a human, just like you and I and everybody else. He was just a man that was African American, who was first married to an African American woman back in the day when he was in Buffalo. And those two were sweethearts, and they're from the same city. The thing is that his life changed when he married Nicole Brown. They became inseparable, and supposedly OJ was controlling until he beaten his wife up many times. Even on the day of the time that she was being killed, supposedly Simpson had threatened her as well. There are so many things that go on with African American athletes, especially men. We get into trouble. For some reason or other, we get caught up. We're caught up in the social media. We're caught up in a war with our families. We're caught up. Caracas Ime Udoka, who was engaged to one of the most iconic, I'd say iconic, but one of the most legendary actresses, Nia Long. That broke off after this situation in Boston with the intern. The late, great Kobe Bryant, his early years of his career. Scandal, supposedly with a 19-year-old at a off-season or at a rich resort up in Colorado. He admitted it to it. And his wife, Vanessa, stood up with through thick and thin on that. Everything that we've had outside of just Pete Rose, every scandal we've had in the late 20th century and the 21st century has been with African American athletes and men. The only one woman, basically a WNBA legend, and maybe Hope Soda. But there has been no women. Maybe a couple DUIs and WNBA players. But African American men who are in the NFL, NBA, MLB are targeted. more so in the NFL and NBA. They're a target. My take on this is that more sports performance psychologists or sports mental training specialists should be taking these guys aside, calming whatever is in their heart. It's making them so amped up. I can only pray the fact is that the guys the guys like Rasheed Rice and others that have been in trouble with the law find their solace and pray that they find themselves and be able to recover for what has ailed them. Even Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes, indirectly, it's not affecting him directly, but even he has a dad that is a former baseball player that is possibly facing 10 years in prison because of a DUI. How of a pattern this is for African American men not knowing that help is still there. On next week's Sports Zone, we hopefully have Courtney back. We'll talk about Tigers' comeback. We'll also talk about the baseball season. We'll also talk about the upcoming WNBA season that's coming before us. We'll also talk about uh, why is it that San Francisco's Brandon Ayuk is being put into trade rumors. And we'll look at the NFL draft as well. All that and more, we come back and see you next week. Courtney, we will see you next week. Or Courtney Mendenhall. Hopefully you feel better, Courtney. Missed you on today's show. Until next week, I'm yours truly, the sports vet, Michael Lewis. Talk to you next week. Take care of yourself, be kind to one another, and keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon. You've been listening and watching the Sports Show on the Key Sports Network. This is the King Sports Network.